Yeah. Can I see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is
Next
it
slide.
visible now?
Yeah, it's visible. Next slide. This is how we manage floods. These are all the recent pictures that came out in the different paper clippings. The one on top left is in urban, peri-urban area of Chennai. They were all standing on water but searching for water. This is how we manage our water resources. The one on the bottom is a railway station where a train should come, but then you can see a catamaran is coming inside. This is what happens if you don't understand the natural hazards and bring down the risks. And if you keep on increasing the risk, the natural hazard or the natural event becomes a disaster. Flooding is a natural event. And when we intervene in the environment without understanding the environment in the better context, this is what will happen. On the right-hand side top, what you're seeing is Chennai 2015 floods. So poor, rich, everyone were forced out of their homes. Many of us would have got affected. Mind you, in this 2015 floods, for almost 30, 40 years, we were dumping on this Kuvam and Adaya River. In just one day, it just spilled out everything that was dumped into it. And it took almost 1 week for us to mobilize the conservancy workers from different parts of the state to clear it. So that's the power of the nature. So we need to understand. So this is the present status of water management in an urban context. Next slide. People who are familiar in Chennai and familiar in Anna Nagar can understand this better. What you see in the bottom is the Kuvam River crossing the Shanti colony. And the blue line on top is Oteri Nalla, a natural drainage that crosses Anna Nagar east, and it crosses near this K4 police station. And some time back, there was a project in which they were trying to interconnect these two systems. And the idea is to basically divert the water from Oteri Nalla, what you see on the top, to the Kuvam River on the bottom. And basically what I'm trying to say is the significance of hydrology, the flow rate and then the flow system, what we need to understand. And it was just like laying a pipeline connecting these two systems. And in 2015 floods, the rivers happened. What was planned to divert water from Oteri Nalla to Kuvam got reversed. The head in Kuvam, as it increased, it started flooding Oteri Nalla, which is a very small stream. And that in turn affected all the banks, areas in the bank. And we were actually I was staying in O block at that point of time. And we really got affected. I could see what actually happened. So this is what happens when we don't understand the hydrology and the flow systems and the rivers carrying capacity and things like that, and then try to evolve or manage our systems. Next slide. I'm just trying to give you some pointers for you to understand the present level of water management. That's what my objective from these slides. This is our drought management, which is quite familiar to all of us. The public system fails and all the surface water goes dry, surface water supply system goes dry. And we were totally dependent on private tankers, which is groundwater system, but that again tapped from the peri-urban areas of Chennai, which could not be tapped by our public water supply system works. And what you see in the bottom page, the picture graph, the picture showing the tankers in line. This was the tanker strike that happened in 2018 drought, when the entire IT corridor was closed because of this water supply. Because of these people, went on a strike. Entire IT corridor, most of it depends on water tankers. This is how we manage our drought in an urban context. It's not only in Chennai. You take any city for that matter, this is how we manage. Next slide. And this is all because we don't understand the urban water bodies, and we fail to manage these water bodies. This is a typical case. What you see is the Velicheri Lake, and the larger blue tone, what you're seeing is the actual area of the lake, which I digitized from the Survey of India topographic sheet that was published during 1950s. And when I overlaid it and on the present Google map, this is how Velachery Lake has shrunk. It was playing a role in terms of groundwater recharge. It was playing earlier, these were all basically irrigation systems, but when we started urbanizing, we were not able to understand what role it can play and what best we can use it to manage a drought and as well as floods. So this is what I'm trying to say. Our knowledge on understanding the environment in which we live in has to improve. Next slide. But the way in which we were managing our water resources in the past is totally different. We were all excellent water managers. I mean our Tata parties are all, our ancestors are all excellent water managers. The Bavdi wells, what you see in the top left, and the bottom, what you see is an eri. Many of you from Tamil Nadu will understand what an eri is. A concave shaped bund constructed perpendicular to the slope. Just stores the water, and the water is used for irrigation by gravity, and no energy is being applied here. We have about 80,000 such irrigation tanks in South India, put together Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and Karnataka. The Keres of Karnataka and the Cherus of Andhra Pradesh, the Eris of Tamil Nadu are all classic examples of how we manage our water resources, particularly in Tamil Nadu, where we don't have perennial sources, and the rainfall is restricted to 60 days during southwest and northeast monsoon. Our farmers will have to store it for the next 300 days and then use it for the domestic and agriculture needs. And so these systems were evolved based on the runoff available in an area and the quantity that can be stored and the area that can be irrigated and things like that. So there's a lot of science into these traditional water management systems that were evolved in the past. The picture graph on the right-hand side top corner, what you see is a simple water diversion system adopted in the northeast, and the center one is the Kund of Rajasthan, where we get less than 300-400 millimeters of rainfall, and everything gets percolated because of the sandy layer. These people have created a well, but it is fully paved on all sides, basically a sump, and it is fully covered to avoid evaporation. And to create runoff, they pave all around. And so the water that falls goes as runoff and then enters into these wells through the openings what you see there. And then it is stored and used for domestic and as well as cattle purposes. And the picture on bottom is the suranga. And the fellow who's standing there is an expert in constructing suranga. These are basically the traditional water harvesting systems constructed in the northern part of Kerala and the northwestern part of Karnataka, particularly in the Kasaragod areas. Where they construct a tunnel basically. Suranga is basically a tunnel, and they construct this tunnel based on the kind of drainage patterns that is there and on the surface. And the more drainage pattern they intersect through this tunnel, the more seepage that happens in this tunnel. And the water that flows in the tunnel is actually collected through a pond, and then that is used for drinking and domestic and agriculture purposes. So the point here for us to understand is that, see, you see a gamut of water harvesting systems. All these are traditional systems. These are time tested. These have seen many droughts, and these have seen many floods, acted as drought mitigators and as well as flood mitigators and drought managers. And it's not a one-size-fits-for-all solution. All these systems were evolved taking into account of the environment in which they live in, the kind of hydrological aspects, the kind of meteorological characters that prevail in that area, and accordingly, these systems have been evolved. So this is the point what we need to understand. Next slide. What you basically infer from this is that in the past, most of the systems are, community designed and managed, and the state played a facilitating role. And it is evolved integrating the local hydrogeology and hydrology. So the community that evolved had sound knowledge in designing these systems. And these are simple, time-tested, and effective. And as I said earlier, these were acting as good drought mitigators and flood moderators. And in the past, water management was everybody's business. It was not a TWAD board's business. It was not a CMWSS business. It was everybody's business. So we had a multi-stakeholder platform involved in managing the water resources in the past. And with the advent of Britishers and with the kind of management system, the so-called management system we started introducing, the community's involvement in managing the resources or the community's attachment in managing these resources slowly started, decaying. And then community became just a receiver and the state became a supplier. And that's the whole reason for which we are facing this kind of water management system in the present conditions. Next slide. Coming to the second part of my presentation, we'll see what I'm just giving you an overview of what is happening in Chennai. No other city will have so much of resources. We have reservoirs and we have water tapped from the Krishna River, which is an interstate transfer, which is an inter-basin transfer. From Krishna Basin, it comes to UK Basin. And then we have a desalination plants, we have the private tankers, we have the bottled water supply, we have the desalination plants, and we have water tapped from the Viranam sources, which is inter-district transfer of water. Viranam is actually a system tank which gets water from Kaveri, which is diverted and then stored in Viranam, and then from there it is pumped to Chennai. It is about Viranam, for people who are new to Tamil Nadu, it is about 230 kilometers down south of Chennai, and where we have a large lake. And this lake receives water from Kaveri, and this water is treated and then it is pumped to Chennai. And the safe yield is somewhere around 200 million liters per day of is what we get from Viranam. So what I mean to say is we have a gamut of water supply systems. No other city will have such baskets of practices in terms of different sources, what they depend on to meet the domestic water sources. But in spite of all this, we were not able to meet the demand of 150 liters per capita per day. And it is highly subsidized, lacks economic sustenance. The present cost varies between 10 rupees, which is the water that is stored in the reservoir and then treated and supplied, cost somewhere around 10. And the highest is desalination plant, 40 to 50 rupees. And what we play, and above all, another interesting thing which happens in Chennai is that in the added areas where there is no water supply, but still they have to pay the water tax. So you have to pay. You have to pay even if you don't get water. So that's the kind of water management we have in Chennai now. In fact, I'm sitting in one such area. I'm in Ambattur, and when this water supply was not introduced here, we still have to pay the tax, and there's no pipeline mostly. Of course, now we got the connections. And what we pay in terms of tax is much less, peanuts, and whereas the government, the spending by the government is much higher. So it lacks economic sustenance, is what I'm trying to say. Next slide. This is the cost. On an average, the private tankers cost 500, whereas in 2018 drought, we paid even as high as 500 rupees per KL. This is much higher. And if you look at the sources, we actually started with AK Basin. We had this reservoirs. People who are familiar with Chennai will know this. We have the Red Hills reservoirs at Red Hills and Chembarambakam and Sholavaram. And when these got dried up, we went in for this first system, the AK Basin. We have an RNAR Koratliar Basin is what we call as AK Basin. This is about 40-50 kilometers north of Chennai. We have a huge alluvial deposits. About 30-40 meters of thickness of sand there, and good recharge happening there. UNDP did a study in 1980s and then said we can tap around 100 mld of water there, safe yield. In 2002 drought, the 100 mld came to zero, and we were actually buying water from the farmers. So then we went in for surface water, increasing the number of tanks. And then we went for Telugu Ganga, which is because of MGR and NTR were the chief ministers, and the idea is to get 12 TMC of water over a period of 6 months to Chennai. And when it was realized in somewhere around 1989 until 2001, except in 1994 till 2001, I have the data I've seen, and for the 15 years period. Except in 1 year, in none of the years we received this assured quantity of 12 TMC. So this is the problem of interstate or interbasin transfer, what we face. So when Telugu Ganga failed, and when the surface water failed and the groundwater failed, the government thought of going in for Viranam, and because it is a system tank with Kaveri, and then they implemented this Viranam water supply system. The safe yield of Viranam is 180 mld. It's not 200 ml. It's 180 mld. And when they had this entire system in place, Viranam was dry, and there's no flow in Kaveri. And what the government did, since Viranam is located in a good navally aquifer, what we call as the Kadalur sandstones, the potential sandstone formations extending down to a depth of 400 meters. We drilled around 70 borewells there, and from 40 borewells, we tapped around 100 mld, and that was supplied to Chennai. This was the case in 2004 drought, I believe. Our requirement was somewhere around 600 mld, and what was supplied was only just 100 mld. And the rest is all met from groundwater sources. So when Viranam failed, and then there's no surface water, and we went in only for naval aquifer, the government thought of going down south and then lay their hands on Polydam. And since there was a lot of hue and cry by the farmers and said that we just can't come up to Polydam to tap water resources, and then they dropped that idea, and then they finally went in for this desalination plants. And what you see now, the Nemeli plant, and then the Minjur plants, all these are all the aftermaths of this Neyveli groundwater aquifer tapping. In spite of all this, so many sources we have, and in spite of all this, we are still the lowest per capita water supply in the country. And supply is erratic, and just because it is erratic and non-dependent, public went in for their own sources. Their own sources, I mean, is the groundwater source. So this was the starting point for us when I was in Center for Science and Environment, and when we decided to do a campaign on water harvesting. We thought we should work on water literacy, and the first thing what we did is to put together whatever I have said to you is basically we came out with a sort of a background paper to understand the kind of water supply system and the sources and things like that. What is happening? We are trying to put a balance on what is the government supplying and where it's being sourced and how the balance is being tapped. And we found that, as I was telling to you earlier, out of 600 mld, only 100 mld is being supplied. So the remaining 500 is tapped from groundwater sources, in-house wells and borewells, and private tankers, which is again groundwater. So that's the starting point for us to look at what is happening on Chennai's aquifer. What are all the kind of aquifer we have, and what is the storage capacity, and what kind of recharge systems we need to sustain them, and what kind of role the surface water bodies can play in terms of sustaining this aquifer in Chennai city. Next slide. I think we can skip, but I'll just be very fast. This just to give you an overview of how we evolved our policies from 1971 to 2010, how the rainfall fluctuated, and in every drought period, you can see the government coming out with the policies. In 1985-86, when there was a severe drought, and water was transported through trains. Many of you from Chennai will remember this, and that's the time we came out with this Groundwater Regulation Act, first of its kind in the country. And then in 1992 went in for alternate water supply, and then Telugu Ganga was realized in around 1996. And 1994 RWH was talked about, and then we made RWH mandatory in 2002. In the 2002 drought, we came out with this Viranam scheme, and Viranam also failed, and then we went in for this desalination unit. So in terms of bringing out policies, we are number one in the country. But in terms of implementing these policies, God only knows. Next slide. Another interesting study we did in the Center for Science and Environment is the household survey we did. At that time, Chennai was 174 square kilometers and 155 wards. So we classified these wards into rich, moderate, and poor people, and then we classified into good supply, moderate supply, and poor supply, and we classified in terms of groundwater source and things like that. And we created a matrix, and then selected samples, and then did a household study, and to identify what are the different sources the community depend upon, the consumption pattern for drinking, the consumption pattern for non-drinking purposes, the per capita consumption, things like that. It's quite an interesting study, which I will say, which we did somewhere between 2002, 3, and 4. And this is what we came out with from the study. The per capita consumption in Chennai at that point was, this is a 2002 data, what I'm sharing with you, is somewhere between 75 to 90 LPCD. It's nowhere near the norms of 132 LPCD. And this is put together all the sources, the public supply, the private tankers, and the community themselves source from their own sources. And look at the figures. Metro water supply meets only 33%, and whereas 63% of the daily requirement is met from groundwater source. So this gave us this was the starting point for us to say, to sustain our water sources and to sustain our domestic water supply system, we need to sustain our groundwater sources, because it's again the groundwater sources that is acting as a risk management system to meet our requirement, particularly during drought period. So, and then the campaign came up, and then the water harvesting campaign came up, and rain center was established, and Akash Ganga Trust and rain center, and all that came up, in the process. Next slide. So I just come to the last part, the hydrogeology of Chennai. So this focused us to look at what is happening on the hydrogeology of Chennai. We were kind enough to have this hydrogeological map, the geological map prepared by Mr. K.M. Medapuri. He's a very senior consultant, retired from the Central Groundwater Board, and he was doing consultancy for quite some time, and I had the opportunity to work with him together. So he pulled in the kind of borehole data from his own studies, and then evolved this geological map, and then we applied the GIS, and then I was able to pull in some more data, and then we came out with this overall geological map of Chennai. This is a metropolitan area, 1189 square kilometers. What you are seeing, the light greenish color, what you see in the down, is the hard rock area. The area south of Alandur, Pallavaram, Tambaram, Krompet, all that falls in this hard rock area. This is the basement rock. This rock is 4,500 million years old. And as far as this hard rock terrain is concerned, the top 10-15 meters act as a good aquifer. The weathered portion of this hard rock acts as a good aquifer. It acts as in terms of open well, these are ideally good. And as you go deeper and deeper, the extension of these structures will be limited, and the yielding characteristics of this aquifer is in general low. But whereas in certain zones like faults and medium ones, it will be higher. Just above it, you see a pinkish trend extending east-west and also all along the coast. That is basically alluvium. Alluvium is basically derived from your Adyar River, and that is followed by hard rock. The alluvium thickness varies between 20 to 30 meters, and below which lies the hard rock. This alluvium acts as a good aquifer for Chennai city. In one rain, this gets recharged. Further north, you see is you see the alluvium followed by tertiary and Gondwana. The tertiary is actually a sandstone formation, which is good. Gondwana is not so good, which is more of clay. When you move towards west of Chennai, we have alluvium followed by Gondwanas in south, and then alluvium followed by tertiary. So the point what I'm trying to make here is that it appears to be technical, but I just want you to understand that it's a complex hydrogeological setup what we have in Chennai, and each formation has its own characteristics in terms of the annual recharge that takes place in these aquifers. The amount of water that can be extracted varies, and the hydraulic conductivity or the storage capacity of these aquifers varies very widely. And so we cannot have a one-size-fits-for-all solution in terms of managing these aquifers of Chennai city. Next slide. Just to give you an overview of the kind of potential we have in Chennai city. This is north of Chennai, and the central part, the blue thing, what you're seeing is the Reddles Reservoir. And the arrow marks are showing the thick yellow line. These are all what we call as paleo channels. The old river courses, supposed to be potential zones. So borewells drilled in these areas are likely to give a much higher yield than the borewells drilled in the rest of the areas. So identifying these pockets, keeping it, sustaining it, and then keeping it to meet our requirement and drought is one plan which we can think of. Next slide. In the same areas, we have the small green. Next, just go one slide above. The same North Chennai, what we see is the small green colored dots. These are all the Kadalur sandstones. This is the same sandstone what we are tapping from the Neyveli aquifer. these are also a very good potential yielding aquifers. And I'm saying this not based on the secondary data analysis, but we have actually done projects in these areas. What we see in the the right up down below, the Canopus and Tatas are the two projects which we did, which are located in these areas, and this is the kind of yield that the borewells drilled in these areas can yield. So we just can't simply rule out Chennai's groundwater system is not that potent. In fact, a borewell drilled in an area near Avadi for exploratory purposes by the Geological Survey of India in 1980s resulted in a flow well. It is an artesian well. So they drilled up to 800 meters, around 2,400, 500 feet depth. Water was simply flowing out, and the flow was somewhere around 1 to 1.5 MLD. And we never tapped it, and that was closed. So there are areas available within Chennai which can yield substantial quantum of water. Next slide. Coming to this is the northwest of Chennai, Chembarambakam, and then north, we have this floodplains of Kuvem that can give again a substantial quantum of water. Borewell located by the side of this Kuvem river, where we have the floodplains of 20-25 meters of alluvium thickness. You use this the dry riverbed, and then try to have storage systems, have bandaras, restrict the subsurface flow, so that the recharge happens and increase the kind of potential all along the floodplains, which can be tapped through borewells. And that is also another option for us. Next slide. The same floodplains of Kuvem can also be tapped. The floodplains of Adayar, the other river which flows in Chennai, which has a capacity of yielding even up to 50,000 liters per hour. These are all shallow wells. We just went in for 9 meters, 10 meters well. And the pumping rate was so high. In one well, we even touched around 30,000 liters per hour. And in fact, we cannot dig the well, and we have to engage an high pumping tractor mounted pump to pump out the water to install this ring wells in some of this floodplains of Adayar. So potential pockets, but then we have polluted this river and made most of these floodplains unusable. But have this rectified and then use it only for your surface water flow. You have a good aquifer that can be well recharged and used, particularly in terms of drought management. In fact, some of these recommendations we also made to Metro Water in last drought to tap somewhere around 50 MLD to meet their tide over the prices. Next slide. South of Chennai, this is more of in the hard rock area. The pinkish patch what you're seeing is all the hard rock areas, and the FF is all the minor faults. Faults are basically cracks that extend down below up to 100, 200 meters of depth, and or even below that. And these act as good conduits of water, and that can store substantial quantum of water. And identifying extraction structures in these areas will give us a substantial quantum of groundwater. So identify them, recharge them, integrate your surface water bodies with these systems and then with these structures, and then recharge them, and then use it for your risk mitigation measures. Can be one of the options which Chennai can look upon. Next slide. So as I was mentioning earlier, one size fit for all will not work out. We'll have to evolve the recharge systems also based on the aquifer conditions. I'm just giving you 3 cases. In the case of Besanagar, where there's all alluvium, a simple recharge well will do. 5 feet or 6 feet, a ring well, diverting water into it will take care of. So because of high porosity and permeability. Next slide. In places where you have clay on top, and then we have fine silt and sand, particularly in areas of Annanagar, the central part of Chennai, alluvium followed by the Gondwana, what I was mentioning earlier, where you can have ductum borewells. So you have a well, and then you put a borewell and take the borewell up to a depth at which you get sand or silt, or where you struck the aquifer and try to recharge the aquifer. So having a pit of just 1 feet or 2 feet on top on the clay, as you know, clay will not allow water to permeate through it. That's why we make pot out of clay. It is highly permeable, but it is highly porous, but less permeable. So the water harvesting system in a clay will not work out. So we'll have to look at the kind of hydrogeology in that particular area, identify the porous formation, and then design a recharge. Next slide. And hard rock area, Tamram, when we exhaust the weathered portion, and then we went deep below to tap the fractured rock occurring at 80 meters and 90 meters. Again, we'll have to, if we are designing a recharge system, we'll have to design a system so that we are recharging these fractures which we are tapping down below. as I was mentioning earlier, if you are just planning the percolation pits or left at the top 2 or 3 feet depth, it will be recharging your the shallow aquifer, whereas what we are tapping will be from the deeper aquifers. So there will be a mismatch from where you tap and where you recharge. So understanding of the local hydrogeology is very important to design proper water harvesting system. Next slide. These are deep-seated aquifers where areas like Coimbatore and areas of Bangalore, we drill down below up to 1,000 feet and 1,500 feet to tap water. And again, in these areas, the systems need to be designed in such a way that you recharge it at least up to the first water strike, where you get water at the first level. For example, you're digging at 1,000 feet and if you're striking water at 800 feet, the recharge system should be at least up to a depth of 800 feet so that the first aquifer gets recharged so that the borewell gets recharged. So the point is basically we need to understand the hydrogeological conditions of an area, and that will help us in managing the resources much better. Finally, next slide. To conclude, as of now, we don't have much data available on urban hydrogeology. And it's in bits and pieces. And whatever I'm sharing you based on our personal experiences and from the kind of data what I was able to get from my senior, Mr. K.M. Vedapuri. And with 30 years of experience and the kind of field data what we get is what is able to for me to share this information with you. But otherwise, these informations available in public domain is very, very limited. And knowledge of urban hydrogeology, this term urban hydrogeology itself is not being talked about at this point of time, which we have to talk of. And we need to model these aquifers first. We need to understand what are the different kinds of aquifers we have and what is the recharge capacity of these aquifers and how much quantum it can intake and what maximum we can extract. And in fact, our development model to be evolved based on this groundwater system. It is very clear public system is not able to meet a requirement. It's only going to be the groundwater systems of that particular city. And if that's the case, then we need to understand what's the maximum carrying capacity of these aquifers, what maximum population it can meet. And this is just I'm talking in terms of freshwater resources. And then you explore in terms of greywater availability and recharge and things like that. So for effective urban water management, one need to understand and integrate the hydrogeology of an area for better management. With this, I stop, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Saravanan. That was very comprehensive. And you have actually highlighted so much about the need for knowledge to be taken into account while designing solutions. My first reaction is, before I throw open to the audience, is you had mentioned in the beginning that the earlier centuries, the community was taking a lot of ownership for the water, and they had aeries and tankas and various structures that they had. And they really intimately connected with nature in the kind of rainfall and how to store the water for the rest of the year. So it worked, and there was scientific basis to this. I'm sure we can validate some of these technologically even today. And it worked because the community was disciplined enough to honor water and take care of it. Today's urban situation is such that most of the people are not from the same location, from the same community, or they are floating population, they're migrants. They may not have that connect, and we've lost all that knowledge. And though you pointed out that still a lot can be done, there is a huge potential for Chennai itself. How do you think we should approach a solution? Today, is it, do we start completely new, or is there some way by which we can connect with the past? And you mentioned about policies being created every time there is a crisis, but then the implementation is a big challenge. So in all this, while you have highlighted scientifically, things can be restored, but something else is missing. How do you like to approach a solution in this context?
Basically, we are in a delivery model. The public system acts as an owner, and it looks as the community as the receiver. So that will not work. We need to have a multi-stakeholder platform first. The government alone cannot manage the resources. That is coming out very clearly. See, even in our Ramnath study, that's what is coming out very clearly. So we need to have a multi-stakeholder platform, bring in all the stakeholders, and then try to understand what is the kind of resources we have. We don't have to look at public water supply system alone. The crux of the problem lies in centralized water supply system. You decentralize it, it is much easier to manage. So we centralize our system and then trying to find a solution. You evolve a system which is totally decentralized, looking at the different sources at different levels available, and then try to integrate that in that decentralized way will be a much easier option. But that has to be done with an active involvement of all the stakeholders. See, there is a lot of research that needs to be done. So the research institutions need to play a role. The community need to play a role in managing the water bodies in Chennai. The community themselves are degrading the water bodies in Chennai. So the community need to be sensitized so that they maintain it. They don't dump their waste in it. And then the government to play a facilitative role than the bossism sort of an attitude. So we need to, the crux lies in decentralized system. In urban context, I'll say a decentralized system to start with, and then have multi-stakeholder platforms at different levels, which will be the starting point for it. I'll not say this will give you an excellent solution, but you need a starting point. The starting point should be these two areas.
Do you have any examples in India or anywhere else in the world about how a multi-stakeholder system is in operation or successful or otherwise? Is there a better model that exists today that we could look at for as an example? Anywhere?
See, in an urban context, this multi-stakeholder platform is yet to come out. I'll say the rainwater harvesting campaign, in a way, it was taken up in such a model. The government played a facilitative role, and we had a good IAS officer sitting on top, and every morning she reviews the development of water harvesting. The media used to play a role. Every morning we have all these players coming and meeting with the secretary there. It was more of an I will say it's an involvement of all the players. And we have good case studies whenever we come out with, when Shekhar Raghavan comes out with good case study, he shares it with the media, and media try to take it up to the community. So that was it was a joint initiative. So I think the rainwater harvesting campaign in Chennai city by itself is a good case to start with. But in rural context, there are good institutions working at the community level, building the community, bringing in the kind of the technical know-how for them, and then evolving community-based institutions to manage the resources. It's happening all over the country. We have BAIF in Tiptur doing excellent work. We have Dan Foundation in Madurai doing excellent work. So it's all there, spread all over the country. But in urban context, to come out with the players are much larger here. It's yet to happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Saravanan. Any questions from the audience? So you can raise your hand so that it would be easier for us to.
Can also be posted on the chat.
Yeah, you could also post it on the chat and we'll pick it up and read it. So while we wait for some responses, I see a need for a lot of education. You talked about literacy, water literacy. So we have the material, but unless we have, when we say multi-stakeholders, then there must be awareness and the need for people to participate. I think to some extent you have created the need in this forum. There are about 30 odd listeners, but a larger audience needs to feel this need that they need to participate. And it is not that some centralized solution, a magic wand is there, which will give them water from tomorrow. So, so there is a need, and I don't know. I mean, IIT, ICCW can look at, spearheading this. There's Anna University, which has done fantastic work in water management. So some of these institutions can come together, and probably today with education being within reach, because of the electronic medium, it's possible. Let's say Chennai city or any other city can come forward, but Chennai city certainly being on the global map for water stress could take the lead in this, and how multi-stakeholder participation can be initiated. It may take a while, maybe several years, but at least we will move in the right direction. Is there something
Yeah,
we
it's,
could do?
yeah, it's highly relevant. See, when CSC started this network, National Water Harvesters Network all over the country, and that came out with, like Pani Yatras being conducted, and Catch Water was a newsletter that was being done, and then setting up of rain centers all over the country, but not much being done except for the Chennai one. And then it fizzled out. Not much of voices happening or coming out from the community level. I think there's a huge gap now for some sort of a constant focus on campaigns in terms of water literacy, in terms of policy research, and in terms of ground action oriented research. There's definitely a need, and I think that's where ICCW can play a lead role here, with this forum, which is already available there. So we can probably take an issue at a time and then bring in the kind of stakeholders of that particular issue involved in that particular issue, and try to find out, if not solutions, at least sensitize the issue, and try to find out what are all the areas which we can focus in future. So I think there's a major role for ICCW to play to take this point forward. I totally agree.
Sure. So I see Mr. Shekhar Raghavan, Dr. Shekhar Raghavan in the audience. You had mentioned them. Dr. Shekhar Raghavan, could you share your views?
Yeah, sir, I have one question to Saravanan.
Okay.
He was talking about this Oteri Nalla, that we were trying to connect it with Goa. But I thought all Nallas were connected to the three so-called rivers within quotes. Isn't it, Saravanan?
Yeah, that's a natural, it is a tributary of Kuvam. But this was a man-made connection which they made using a canal. And without adopting studying the inverse level of Oteri Nalla and Kuvam. So that's where the problem is.
No, but Oteri Nalla will go to Kuvam, right?
Oteri Nalla will join Kuvam at a much lower gradient. At much lower gradient. More towards the sea, it will have this intersection. But this diversion that happened at Kannanagar is the point I was trying to make is that the invert level need to be studied proper, so that when you try to divert from one source to another, you should also take into account what happens when the head of this system raises. It should not does the reverse flow of it. So that sort of a study has not been done, is what I was trying to emphasize as far as this Oteri Nalla diversion is concerned.
Another point that I would like to emphasize is that why are we abusing our water bodies? As Saravanan said, and it's very unfortunate, the state is doing it. You go to Krompet, you will see panchayats dumping solid waste into water bodies. And there is a lot of encroachment. See, these are actually treasures that we have inherited from our forefathers. Wonderful system of water management. But they are being abused left, right, and center. Why? Why should that happen at all? So who should be sensitized? I think in this case, the state will have to be sensitized.
The state will have to be sensitized for many reasons, for many aspects.
Multi-stakeholder sensitization needed.
Yes.
Dr. Shekhar Raghavan, one is the state, but I think also all of us are also somewhere responsible, because the state is only dealing with the domestic waste and the industrial waste. So whatever they get, they are transporting it into the water bodies without treatment. So the state is not able to treat it. Maybe the users may have to treat it to some extent. So that is where I think the multi-stakeholder model is important. So I wanted to ask you another question. You mentioned about 35% to 65%, the ratio of metro water to groundwater. There was a slide in 2002, and that is when the rainwater harvesting campaign took off, and under Chief Minister Jayalalitha. So since then, has the ratio changed, or is metro water giving more because of harvesting, or has the ratio gone the other way around, that people are dependent more on their bore well? Is there any
So no
information on
studies,
that?
yeah, no studies have been done because this was a unique study. We went to the household and then tried to capture their consumption. We tried to quantify their, the consumption. There was no follow-up study. That study was basically to understand the kind of sources they depend upon and the per capita consumption. But there was no
Right.
follow-up study done on that. That can be
Okay.
another starting point for ICCW to know, to look at what is the kind of consumption.
But would you say, when you say 35 to 65, to some extent it's already decentralized, because Metro Water is only 35%, and should that be even lower and have more of, or are you saying decentralized but Metro Water should supply? Because today people are finding their own solutions, isn't it?
No,
Most of them
in
don't get
fact-
Metro Water at all.
Yeah, so see, at that time, Metro Water was not to the full extent. So that's why this is coming out. You look at now, probably the dependence on groundwater will be much less because now they are supplying around 800 MLD. So now it should be much less of the dependence. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that whenever the public supply goes down, the only source that was able to tide over the crisis were the groundwater source. Be the in-house wells and borewells or the private tankers, it's all the groundwater source. So that's the point which I was trying to make.
Okay. And what is your view on desalination? Because I think that is becoming a third source, which today is gaining, at least in Chennai, sitting a neighborhood. More and more desalination plants are coming, seawater desalination. Is that a healthy sign, or are we doing something?
I'll respond it in a different way. Desalination must be the last option. After we exploit or explore all other options available for us. The problem lies in your centralized water supply system. When you centralize it, you don't look at the local groundwater potential pockets. When you centralize it, you don't look at the surface water bodies as recharge systems. So when you centralize it, you always tend to tap water from one source, large quantity. So in fact, when I made the study for Metro Water some time back, we suggested 50 MLD to be tapped in 4 locations to tide over the crisis. They said that is not possible. They say one area, 100 MLD, 200 MLD is what we can think of. So that's the problem of the attitude. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. You try to centralize it and try to find a solution is the biggest problem they have.
The biggest problem. Okay.
RO must be the last option. And look at the sustenance of RO. You produce it at 40 rupees, and then but with the tax what you're collecting from the community is what 10 or 15 rupees per month. 100 or 150 rupees per month. What I pay is what 900 rupees for 6 months, which works out to 500 rupees per month, which is peanuts. So if I get RO water, I'm not paying for what I'm getting. So it's not going to sustain. So it will be subsidized, and finally it will be non-functional. Just because it has high cost production. Right now, Metro Water is keeping the production of these desalination units lesser. So it has its own limitations. So I'm not against RO, but RO should be one of the options and the last option when you exhaust all your available options in the urban context.
Mr. Nandakumar.
There is a question from.
We'll take it up. We'll take it up after Dr. Shekhar Raghavan.
You'll be surprised that Chennai is the only metro city which does not have water metering. And there is no tariff as per your consumption. Like what we do for electricity.
Right.
Why is it?
I think they're talking about it, considering it now. So there are.
No, but that is only in the suburbs, because the World Bank is insisting that unless there is water metering, they will not
fund. Correct.
They will not fund. Because in the old city, for example, in Besant Nagar, where I live, there is no water metering. I'm sure in Mandavali, where you live, there is no water metering.
There's no metering. No, it may come up. I think the World Bank project is there. We will have to wait for that. There's a question from Mr. Kishore. I'll read it out. Mr. Kishore, is there any new technology which empowers in future in the state of alternative ways for saving the water source, like rainwater harvesting? And first, Could you explain the question, Mr. Kishore?
No, I understand the question. I'll explain it to him. What
Okay,
he's looking
okay.
at, what he's trying to ask is that in addition to water harvesting, are there any other ways and means in which we can increase our water sources? There are. We have the grey water recycling system, simple systems evolved. Alacrity has done it in its own flat complexes where they segregate their bath and wash and then take it to the reed beds or the canna indica beds, and then they irrigate it, and the water that recharges it is fit for irrigation, and even they collect the water and then use it for toilet flushing. That is happening. In fact, in one of their long back, I'm saying, documented one of the flats in Tambaram when there was no STP there. They even treated their sewage water with this upflow filters, and then integrated that with the canna indica, the bio-based treatment system. So that was working very well. So there are a lot of systems available at the community level.
True. So that will answer the question, Mr. Kishore. Is that what you're looking for? Alternative systems, grey water recycling. Obviously, we need parallel piping to see that grey and black water don't mix, and that there is a separate recycling. Dr. Sridhar Kari, did you want to say something? You had unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Sridhar, sir. Hello.
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Sridhar, retired hydrogeologist from Trad Board, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, Saravanan's lecture was very good. But what is the solution we are going to give for rural areas? So you're talking always about Chennai city. What about the rural areas?
Yeah, you know the answer much better than me, sir. You're my senior. Sir, you're my senior. That's why I said I'll be focusing on urban hydrogeology. I have not touched upon rural, but that's also to be focused upon. But I think it's we don't have that much of time to discuss about it. But I'll be happy if you are.
We'll have another session.
Probably Dr. Sridhar can have that session for us.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
He's an experienced person.
Thank you,
Dr.
Mr.
Sridhar, we will reserve you for another session, and we look forward to
thank you
listening to you on that. Thank you so much for your question.